Welcome back, you all, for CHD 208, Administration of Child Development Programs. This is the video lecture for Chapter 2, which the title is Assessing Community Needs and Establishing a Program. So to create a new program, that's a really exciting endeavor and a challenge that requires a lot of creativity, lots of energy, and sometimes can be really overwhelmingly complex if you don't really have a plan for how you're going to assess the need in your area. So we're going to talk a lot about how we're going to do that. And then once we've established the need, what type of program are we actually going to offer within our community? Clearly, there has to be a need for your program before you ever start a new program. So there has to be some kind of driving force in your community, whether an individual or a group. Someone's got to be the person out there who is creating that energy to drive your program. So before you start a new program, first you have to examine your need. You have to develop the program mission and your values statement. And then you have to decide what type of program you're going to offer. What type of program will fit the need in your area and work along with those available resources that you have in your area. So with all three of those things happening and taking place simultaneously, they're going to influence the type of program that you're going to develop. So let's see about that. So in order for us to decide, we've got to have some kind of a needs assessment, okay? So a needs assessment is how you find out the information so that you can start your program, okay? You do this in that preliminary planning stage. It can usually begin before or after a director is hired to run the program, but it must be completed before you get into any kind of financial or program planning, okay? So before you start your financial planning and your program planning, you got to have a needs assessment done, okay? The purpose of the needs assessment is to determine the number of families and children that are going to use your child care service, and then the type of services that they are desired, that are desired by those that are going to use your program, okay? So how are you going to find it out? Well, you're going to need to collect some data, and you're going to need to collect data on. First step is you have to determine what you have to know, okay? You got to find out how many families and how many children are going to potentially use your program. The third thing is the socioeconomic level of the families that are interested. Many families may be interested in your child care service, but they're unable to pay possibly enough to cover the cost of the services they choose or that they need, okay? So how are we going to collect the data? We know we got to collect data in order for you to know, from your planning perspective. So we might use a questionnaire. Some people choose to use an online questionnaire. Some people may choose to use like a emailed version of a questionnaire, like SurveyMonkey, something like that, some kind of online tool. But questionnaires are going to provide you with very specific data that you're going to be able to record, then compile it all together, and then analyze it to see what those needs are, okay? So like I said, you may do traditional pencil paper, or you may do that online type of version. Now, remember, if you don't think that your community would actually, the demographics and that kind of thing would support an online tool, you're going to need to send out that paper pencil type. When you're doing that, you got to take into planning, you got to pay for postage to mail it. And then in order for you to get an adequate number of responses back, you're probably going to have to include a self-addressed stamped envelope along with your questionnaire so that they would be more apt to mail it back. So those would be some costs that you would have to consider, okay? If you're looking at your textbook, and on page 22, there's a great list of maybe some types of questions that you could include. And typically, about 10 questions is all you want to ask. Okay. Anything less, you might not get enough information. Anything more might be too cumbersome and long for the people that you want to fill it out, and they just may put it away. Okay. So you want to really analyze the questions you ask and make sure you're getting all the information that you need. Okay, a telephone survey. That's another way you can collect your data. In the past, that probably would be a very good way of getting data now because of telemarketers. Lots of people are on like a national do not call registry. So if your number's not saved in their phone, they may not answer it. A lot of people don't answer unknown numbers. So I'm not really sure that now in our current time that a telephone survey might be the best way of collecting. Another way, small group meetings. I actually think this is a great way to do it. It's informal. You can hold those meetings with families that have expressed an interest in your program, and you can get the information that you need that way. This is a great way when you already have a very good idea of who your target audience is, okay, or who your potential client population may be. So now we've done our needs assessment. We know what we need. Now we've got to come up with what our program mission and value statement is going to be. So the characteristics of an early childhood program should emerge from the mission and the values of the program. That's your assignment for this chapter, is actually to develop a mission statement. So when you develop a philosophy or a value statement and a mission statement, these are very carefully designed statements, and they guide the director's decisions about hiring new staff members, what type of professional development they're going to offer to their staff members, so that you can be assured that the people that you hire can actually deliver and implement a program that is consistent with your mission, consistent with your values, consistent with your philosophy. Okay. So I got to develop a mission statement. What should it answer? So this is something you might want to use when you're completing the assignment for this chapter. A mission statement shouldn't be long. Okay. It's clear, it's concise. And what it does is state the purpose and the business of the program in a manner that the stakeholders are the parents, okay, and the teachers and the director and the staff. Everybody needs to understand the mission statement. So here's your questions you're going to ask as you're writing your mission statement. What opportunities or needs exist that you need to address within the population? What do you need to address? What are we currently doing to assess those needs? And what principles or beliefs guide our work? Okay, so when we're talking about the opportunities or needs that exist, that is going to become the purpose of our child care center or the purpose of our organization. What are we going to need? What are we going to do to address these needs is the business side, okay, of your organization. And then the principles or the beliefs that guide your work, those are the values, okay, the values behind your program. So establishing core values will serve as the foundation for your program, and then that way you can plan your program from that point. Okay, so you get your core values from having a really good understanding of child development and best practices in the field. It's why it's so important that your director and your teachers are knowledgeable in the area of child development. And these value statements are important in determining the curriculum. Remember, curriculum is what you teach and how you teach it, and what kind of strategies you're going to use to reflect those core values. Value statements typically emerge from your philosophy, okay? Developing that philosophical kind of position. You may take the philosophy or the philosophical position of maybe a developmental theory. Maybe you're going to do your whole program around that theory, social learning theory, multiple intelligences theory, whatever you're going to choose. But whatever way you choose to go based on that mission, based on that needs assessment, your philosophy or your value statement is going to reflect the values, beliefs, and training of your director. Why would you hire a director? that doesn't have the same values, okay? So it's going to reflect the values, beliefs, and training of the director, and then also reflect the wishes and interests of the program planners and the families who are going to participate in your program. If you're not planning your program that meets what your program planners and your families want, nobody's going to come to it. So you gotta take, that's why that survey and that needs assessment is so important, so you can determine these things and then plan your program to meet those needs. So how are you going to choose a philosophy statement? Well, philosophy statements, just like I said, are based on those values. So philosophy statements are based on your opinion, your assumption about how children learn. They're going to be based on the values of the program planners and the families, and then the views of the planners regarding basic issues in education. So the philosophy statement, and in CHD 215, you're going to write a philosophy statement, which is going to be basically this: your assumption of how children learn, what you value, and then the views of the planners and in regards to those basic issues within education. So needs assessment. Now you've determined your mission and your values philosophy statement. Now what type of program are you going to offer to bring all those things together? Okay, so I'm going to touch on just a few of the programs. First of all, after you've done all of that, you got to, like I said, determine what type of program you're gonna choose. So decisions about the type of program will depend on the assessed need, the development of the mission and value statement, the sources of the funds you have, okay, the money, where you're going to get your money from, and the source of the impetus for the program, okay? So one type of program is a not-for-profit, okay? Not-for-profit programs are government-sponsored, agency-sponsored, or individual cooperative programs, okay? They kind of get into some different legal situations as well. Like they might be something called a 50c3. I'm going to give you an example. If you, let's see, the Lakeside School in Eufaula is a not-for-profit organization, okay? They are agency sponsored and individual cooperative sponsored, meaning that the families fund that along with individual foundations. In the Dothan area, let's see, maybe Houston Academy, Providence. Those are some examples of probably a not-for-profit program. All right, one that we're all very familiar with probably is a government-sponsored program. Head Start is probably the best known of federal government-sponsored programs. They are the nation's leading investment in early childhood care and education. And that's because a Head Start, is the comprehensive program. It includes education, health, nutrition, parental involvement, family support services, and of course it serves at-risk children and their families since 1965. So Head Start is probably the most well-known example of a government-sponsored program. Public school sponsored programs. One thing we know is that they offer these in a full day situation, half day. Half days we're not seeing nearly as much anymore because most of the time both the parents are going to work, and so they need their children to be in school all day long and not just half a day. Another thing we're seeing emerging with public school sponsored programs is universal pre-K, like our OSR funded pre-K in the state of Alabama. And here's that trend with that universal pre-K is we know that universal pre-K grants all 4-year-olds a quality preschool experience because they're governed by those OSR principles, right? Number 2, it's going to ensure that the environment is going to focus on the 4-year-old's social emotional development. And the third thing is it's going to grant public funds to public school districts to support the trend of universal pre-K. Okay, so in Dothan area, Eufaula area, we have an abundance of pre-Ks. Well, the way that works is that actual public school system applies to OSR to have a unit to have an OSR funded pre-K unit. So at OSR then has their own funding and they send it to the public school system in order to run that pre-K. Okay. Another type is a campus child care program. These are sometimes called laboratory schools. There's an increasing demand for these, and the reason is that employers are kind of, oh goodness, I might have skipped one. I'm sorry, y'all. Let me see if I can go back. Let me see if I can go back. I'm sorry, I got them out of order. Okay, so employer sponsored. There's a really big push for this because employers are beginning to analyze the benefits of child care services and seeking creative ways to meet their employees' identified needs. One thing is it's recruitment and retention. It's really a great way for corporations to recruit employees because they can say, hey, we have an on-site or we pay for your child to go to daycare. Okay, so it's wonderful recruitment. Retention, once you get them there, they'll be happy because their children are taken care of if it's a quality program, so they're going to stay employed with you. The morale is better, okay, because they think their employer actually cares about the employee and they're seeing, making sure their needs are being met. And then because the employee may not have to be off of work as often because the child is there, like let's just say the daycare closes or the teacher's sick, that kind of thing, then the parent can still come to work because the child comes to the daycare there. So the productivity really increases as well. All right, now I'm going to go back to this one. Sorry. Campus child care programs, that's another big one. They're really kind of called laboratory schools. They're sponsored by college or school way back in the 70s and 80s, actually on the Sparks campus, Wallace Community College. We had a campus child care program, a laboratory school. It was for the students and the staff members at Sparks Technical College. So it was a benefit for the students and the employees here, and it allowed for the child development program to actually use it where they could go in and work with children and observe children. Okay, so in a lot of these colleges and universities, they use that campus child care program for their teacher education program. The last one is a family child care home. These are kind of like reminiscent of an extended family where a small group of children are actually being cared for in the home of the child care provider. Lots of people like this because of the small setting. It's a flexible schedule. They may keep your children on into the evening, and if there's an emergency, they might take care of your children as well. So that is a lot of reasons why families may choose that. And lastly, I want to talk to you about being an advocate, a child care director, and then you all as teachers and future directors. We need to be advocates. Well, what's an advocate? An advocate is a person who stands up for and gets involved for the need of something. Okay, so we need to really begin to seek ways to become involved politically in our community, in our state, maybe even at the national level, to advocate for quality early childhood programs for our children. We need to be aware of the trends that are happening in the field of early childhood education. Get on some email list of NAEYC or the Alabama Local Association for Early Childhood, maybe some universities and colleges, but get on their email list so that you stay abreast. Family Guidance Center, so we know what's happening in the world around us with early childhood. So that is it for chapter 2. And if you watch this video, you should have heard the answer to every quiz question. Okay, so thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.